Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Zoom In on a Fresh Conversation. It is Monday night all over again, and I am your host, Donna Gray Banks. And it's always a pleasure to bring you new authors and artists here to Zoom In on a Fresh Conversation. And tonight we have Shariah Brown, who is the author of Where the River Meets the Soul. Welcome to Zoom In on a Fresh Conversation. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Zoom In on a Fresh Conversation is brought to you by Eyelis Diamonds LLC, Lee's Press, Milton McCulloch, author of Love and Emancipation, a Dante production, and of course, the Fresh Book Festival, which will be held in the beautiful city of Daytona Beach, 22, 23, 24 February in the year 2024. Registration is open at www.freshbookfestivals.net. Please register and register early. The spots are going really, really fast. So registration is open, www.freshbookfestivals.net. If you have any questions for Shariah, please leave them in the chat room. And this conversation is being recorded. So thank you, Shariah, for being here. Please give us a brief background.
Well, hello, everyone. My name is Shariah Brown, as you heard before. My pen name is S. Nicole. I am a 20-year-old college student. I'm currently attending University of Central Florida as a film major, and I have been an author for about a month now, an officially published author for just about a month. It should be a month and 2 days. I'm super excited to be here. I've been writing for as long as I can remember, and I'm super excited to talk about my book, which features fantasy and magic and Black main characters, as well as members of the LGBTQ community, as I am a member of that community as well. And I'm excited to be here.
So tell us why you picked fantasy as a genre.
Well, I have always been a big fan of magic and fantasy and escapism. And so I figured since that's what I always immerse myself in, then it must be something I know really well. So it still did take some research to learn how to build a world and all that kinds of stuff. But I think all the research was well worth it. I usually focus on just the media that I take in is usually fantasy based. So I do still watch a lot of kid shows. I watched a lot of magical girl shows growing up, things like Winx Club and Lolly Rock. I still watch My Little Pony from time to time. So I've always been in touch with magic and color and fun and joy. And so I decided that that was something that I wanted to write since I knew it really well.
I must admit that Practical Magic is one of my favorite films. Have you ever seen it?
I haven't actually.
Oh, you have to see it. It's called Practical Magic. You will love it. You know Jarvis Thomas?
Yes.
Okay. And so when you're dealing with fantasy, it's just like a novel, I guess, but you have so many different characters. So when and how did you begin to write this book? I mean, did you do it over a summer? Did you start a long time ago and just put everything together like from a journal? Or how did you do that?
So, whenever I'm in class at school, and this started a long time ago, but whenever I'm in class at school, I always have my 5-subject notebook that we have to get. Right. And I always save the last section for whatever I want to write. So the first 4 for school and the last one is just for me. So I always flip to the back and I just start writing stuff down and I'm listening to the teacher, but it keeps my hands busy. And so I was in my speech class at the beginning of my freshman year of college, and I was just writing down random lines, random ideas, and one line kind of came to my head, and it's the first line that's on the back of my book, which I have my book here. But the first line on the back of my book says, "Lifetime after lifetime, lost and found again until the cycle was broken." And I wrote that down in my notebook, just absentmindedly, and I thought, what if I had a story about like soulmates that found each other over and over again, and then one day they didn't, but that caused like a big problem because the world relied on them to find each other. Like, and that idea just kind of grew. And so I started expanding on it. And then I realized this is an idea that I could actually turn into a full novel and not just a short story like I'm used to writing. So it started my freshman year of college, and I did the world building while I was in school. And then once I hit the summer, I started actually writing my words down to put it all together into a book. So I actually started writing the story in the summer, and it took me about a year and a half to completely write the whole story. So it took me about 2 years to write this, but that was pretty much how the idea came to me.
So that's not a small book. It looks like it's 200,
Yep.
300 pages, 300 pages, right?
It
About?
is 432 pages.
Okay, yeah.
So
So,
it is a thick book.
yeah.
Yes.
So that kind of stick-to-itism, because it takes stick-to-itism to do 400 pages. So when you got to, how did you end it? I mean, how did you, because you probably could have gone on and on, right? So what was it that said, okay, period, the end?
So for me, I've always been more passionate about the storytelling than I didn't get wrapped up in the fact of I'm writing a book. I just said I'm
Okay.
writing a story. And so when the story was finished, that's when I finished. And so I just wrote until the story was done, and then I went back and I edited to make sure that everything was cohesive. And that's when I started to think, okay, this is a book. I have to make sure the pacing is right. I have to make sure the grammar is correct. I did all of the like book writing around my second draft. My first draft was just tell the story. And so the ending was where I wanted my characters to be emotionally and not where I wanted the story to end. And so
Right.
once my
Okay.
characters reached that emotional point, that was where I decided this is where I can leave them off. And I feel like as a reader, once you reach the end of that emotional arc, then you feel like you've left off those characters to continue through the rest of their lives. And so I really wanted to make sure that I got to that point in my story, and that's where I put the period. And that was on my first. I probably finished my story around my third draft,
Okay.
but then I took a break so that I could read. I took a break from the book. I sent it to my beta readers, and I read a different book. Poorly Wired Circuit was a book that came out this year as well, and I read that book in the meantime, and it inspired me, and I chose to add an epilogue to my book because of that
Okay.
one. And because in Poorly Wired Circuit, it's a romance book, but it has a lot of introspection because it's purely romance and it doesn't have a plot on top of the romance. So I felt like my book has plot and romance kind of walking side by side, but I feel like my characters still needed one last like push so you could kind of see where they are after a little while when it comes to the romance, and it doesn't just stop where the plot ends. So I added an epilogue to my book because of that. And I felt like that was the final finishing touch I needed.
Right. And when when you put the period at the end, are your characters developed in a way where they can continue, or that's it for this particular book?
They're developed in a way where they can continue.
Okay.
And this book is a standalone, so I won't be writing anymore coming out of this particular story. But I wanted character work is probably my favorite thing to do when it comes to writing. I want my characters to feel like people and not just characters in a book, because I want the reader to be able to connect with them and to care about them in a way that you would a friend. I want you to feel like my characters can
Yeah.
become a friend to you over the time that you're reading it. And so, and that kind of passion about character work has been I've reaped the rewards of that, because all the reviews on my book so far have mentioned how amazing my character work is. And so I think I wanted to leave them in a place where it's like, this is where you stop watching their story, but their
Okay.
story still continues. And so you're left with that feeling of like, man, I'm happy for them.
Right.
And I wanted it to feel that
There's
way.
life after, or there's things that are going to happen after, right? After the story's told. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what I think the most rewarding thing is when you start getting emails about your characters. Well, I have a trilogy, right? So my characters have grown with the book with the trilogy. But when someone writes you and say, "Oh, I really like that person," I like the way you developed that person, or why'd you kill off that person? Because they really get
Oh my goodness.
enthralled in the book. So I hope that for you, that people read it and really get connected to the characters when they start writing you and say, bring this character back in another book or whatever. So it's really nice when you get to that community. And we have many authors that come on and we ask them exactly like, where do you write? Do you write in an office? Do you write outside? We have authors that write at coffee shops, which is something I can't do, outside, which is also something I can't do. What motivates you to write, and where do you do it?
I feel like what motivates me the most to write is just my passion for a particular project. Regardless of what I do, because I do a lot of different things as far as like art and creativity. I'm in film school, I paint, I sing, I'm in choir, I do a whole lot of stuff. And so I feel like my passion for a particular project is what I stick with. So it was just, and there's points in my story where I hit a snag and I'd be like, there's a plot hole, but I don't know how to fix it. But what I've learned about myself is if I just let it go,
To let it go.
eventually it'll come back and I'll know what to do. So I just wait. I kind of wait for it to come to me. So in regards to where I write, wherever the idea hits me. If I'm in the
Okay.
library and I figured it out, I immediately open my laptop or my phone and I write down how to fix that plot hole, or I write down what could happen next, or I don't know where to put this scene and I'm like, oh, I could switch it with this one, and I write that down in my phone. If I had the chance to write it in my actual like laptop and on my and actually fix my work, then I open my laptop and I do that. Sometimes I'll be in the middle of homework and I'm like, oh, I got it. And so I switch tabs and I write it down real quick and go back to my homework. Most of my writing I did in my room though. I'm a night owl, so I'm up all hours of very early morning. um, and so I would write a lot in my bed, just sitting in my bed. I'd finish my homework and it would be like 11 p.m. and I just write and write until I was like, okay, I don't know what to write anymore.
Right. So
The
it's
one
three
thing, the
o'clock. I
one
really need
rule,
to go to bed.
yeah, the one rule I had for myself though to make sure I stayed on top of it was I had to touch my book every day, even if it was
Mm.
just writing down one sentence or deleting something, or I had to touch it every day just to make sure that I'm holding on to it. Um, but most of the time I did my writing at late at night in my bed, just typing on my laptop until I got tired of it.
Now, do you write in chapters or scenes, or how is it did you develop the story? Did you start from the beginning and go to the end, or the end and go to the beginning?
I started at the beginning. I knew where I wanted my character to be at the end.
Okay.
I didn't know how she was gonna get there,
Okay.
and neither did she. So
Right.
we figured it out together. But I started at the beginning. I started with an idea and I built the world first. So the first thing I do is I have a folder for each project I have, and I'm building my folder for my second book I want to write right now. But my folder has my character sheets in it and my world building sheets. So for this particular book, I had a lot of world building to do because the magic system in it is nature based. So I had to figure out where the magic come from. Like what exactly does it do? Where is the magic? Is it only in the river? Is it in the plants too? And all that kinds of stuff. So I made my character sheets, and my main character is an herbalist. So she knows plants really well, which means I had to know plants really well. And so I built the world around it first. Um, and then I kind of added more to my characters, and then I was like, okay, this is what happens to her. This is the inciting incident, and this is where I want her to be at the end. So how do I get her from here to there?
Yeah.
Um, and then I also want her to fall in love with this person. How do I get them together? what journey do they have to go on? How are they good for each other? And it's really step by step, but I started at the beginning with chapter 1, and I just wrote chapter at a time. And my first draft was not actually a finished book. My first draft stopped at, I think, chapter 31 or 32, because I got to a point in my story where I realized I cannot continue writing until I fix everything that was wrong
before,
at the
in the beginning, right.
So I literally was like, all right, this is the end of my first draft. And I went back to the start and I fixed everything I needed to fix. And by the time I went and fixed everything in the beginning and middle, I could cleanly write to my ending. So I just had to keep going from the beginning until I hit a point where I couldn't go anymore, and then just go back and rework it until I hit the end. And my world building,
and your characters had to find the magic. So how did you had to not only have characters in the plants and the water, but then the characters, whoever they are, had to find their magic in those plants, right? Or water. Is that how that went?
So the story is about a girl who she goes on a journey to restore a magical flower to heal her dying sister.
Okay.
So most of these plants have healing properties, as plants usually do, and this one is it's the main healing plant, but it hasn't grown for 5 years. And so she's trying to find a way to restore it so that she can use it to heal her sister, because it's the only plant that's strong enough to heal her sister.
Okay.
And so that's what she does. And so these characters had to figure out this magic that had seemingly, that like it was such a mystery to them, the magic itself, because the reason the flower grows is because of a soulmate bond between the person who originally made the flower, he was a mystic of nature hundreds of years ago, and he made the flower in order to heal his wife who was dying, but he couldn't make it in time. And so she ended up dying, but he decided to leave the flower behind so that everybody who would live after him could still have that to heal other people with. And he bonded their souls to it, essentially. So whenever they reincarnated and met again in new lifetimes, the magic of their bond would make the flower grow again. But somehow or some way, their bond got severed at one point, and so the flower hasn't grown in 5 years. So these characters had to figure out, like, what is this magic? With this story that we've been hearing all our lives that's been told to us as a legend, if it's true, then how do we figure it out? How do we get these people together? How do we? And it's a lot of stuff that they have to figure out as well.
Yeah.
But I think it was challenging because I had to make it make sense, even though like love is not a finite thing, so it's hard to make magic based off of love. So I had to
make
make
sense of it at all, love,
Yeah,
right,
I had to make rules so that it would make enough sense, which was difficult, but it was worth it.
So tell me about the water and its character. What did it have to do with the plants? Are they all connected?
So the river is the main source of magic in the land. So at the very beginning of chapter 1 in my book is the story of Kofir and Elysir, and Kofir is the mystic of nature. And at the beginning of chapter 1, the first like 3 pages is their story of how he, had magic, and he went around creating these magical plants around the land, and then he met her and they fell in love, and then she got sick, and all that kinds of stuff. So when his wife, he came initially to the land to restore their river, because the river was a source of life for the land, and they got hit by a drought, and so they went to go find him to heal the river. So he healed the river initially and infused it with magic, and which helps all the magic plants grow as well. And so the river is the source of magic, and the magic fades over time until the soulmates meet again to restore the strength of the magic, and then the cycle continues over and over.
Now, does the person that heals the river, is he a person that stays in the novel, or he just fades to black? Or she, I don't
After
know if
his
it's she
wife,
or he.
yeah, after his wife passed, he couldn't stay. He couldn't
Okay.
continue life without her. So, he kind of fades away as far as the legend is written. But you know, that's kind of the history of their land, and so they keep the memories of him alive. They honor the river. They respect the nature, because of him, because he was the one who kept their land together, who kept it thriving. You know, he brought it back to life so that they could still be there. And it's
Can
it
you
was
talk a
a lot
little
of
bit
work.
about what kept them apart? What kinds of things? Was it like, okay, I got to the stop sign, he made a left, you made a right? Was it because we lived in two different lands? What were the scenarios that kept them from being together? Just a couple.
Um, well, there was nothing really that kept the mystic and his wife from being together.
No, no,
In their
no.
initial story,
The lady that's
that
finding the new one, the new plant.
oh, okay.
Oh,
Yeah, it's just when you're when you're like reincarnated into a new life, you don't keep the memories of your old life. And you
okay.
may look different. You're a different person now, even though you have the same soul. You're a different person now. So it's
So you
just a
don't even
matter of kind of
remember what
finding
was
it.
going on before. Right. Exactly.
Yeah. So like if I have a past life, I don't remember anything about it. I only know who I am in this life, and I won't remember who I was in this life in the next one. So I may, you know, it's kind of like you find the same spirit. It's two halves of a spirit that
It's
are
a
connected, and you're
spiritual
drawn to each
connection
other.
that was found, right? Okay, I get
Yes,
it.
and so that's
Mhm.
that also inspired my cover. In a lot of art that depicts soulmates, they have what's called the red string theory, which is like an invisible string that is kind of tied to your heart, and it ties you to the other person no matter how far away they are, and eventually you get drawn to that person. And so, since my magic flower is blue, I wanted a blue string. So I have a blue string that goes around each of their hands
Mm,
that connects to the
yes.
flower because the flower brought them together, but that invisible string is still there. Um, and so that's kind of what I wanted to depict in my cover art.
Is
And
that your
my
artwork?
cover artist,
Oh, okay.
no, my cover artist Rebecca Brown. She drew this for me. I don't do digital art. I don't know how to
Right,
do it.
right, right,
I'm
right.
a traditional artist. I work with paper and canvas and yeah, but I kind of like sketched it for her and told her like what exactly I wanted, and she put it together and we worked together until we got to this. But this is what
So
I have
yeah,
in
let
my
me
head.
ask you, how many renditions did you have before you got to that?
I think about four or five.
Okay, yeah,
Um,
that's
she
kind of
got the
standard.
hands she got the hands in the flower really quickly. It was just the background that we had some trouble with. I was like, I don't know what color I wanted. So we did the background green, and then I asked if she could put some foliage around the edges, um and then also the hands themselves. I wanted one to be more feminine and then one to be
More
a little bit more
masculine.
masculine.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted them to have a little bit of a different shape to kind of depict the characters themselves. So and I love a book when you can read through it and you flip back to the cover and then you notice all the details and you're like, oh my
Right.
gosh, it matches. And I had someone on TikTok, she reviewed my book, and on her page she had it was like basically her emotional journey going through the book. Like as she was reading it, she was
Oh,
recording herself. And there was one part where she was like, this book is so good, and then she closed it and she was like, and the cover matches the inside of the book, and it's just so good. And I love that she noticed all those details because I'm a very detail oriented person. I'm a very critical reader, and I love all the details that are put into a good story. So I wanted to make sure that other critical readers and people who are detail oriented would also find little things that they love in my story.
I say that to young and seasoned authors all the time. Don't just walk into the room. Walk into the room and tell me what you saw. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Make it um, more personal. Make it more um, like when you walk into your kitchen, you can kind of know, you kind of scope the whole thing. You know, the stove is not on, this is here, this is there. And I like those kind of details to kind of give an idea of where the character is you know, what kind of room it is, what the colors are in the room. I think that makes all the difference. And I'm with you. And everybody says, well, Donna, that's too much. But I don't know. I think it just makes for a better story. So I'm with you
It
all.
tells you a lot
Yeah.
more. It tells you a lot more too. There's this like writing principle thing that it's kind of like show don't tell, where it's instead of telling the person, oh, this character likes hockey, show it by how they interact with the space around them. So maybe like they walk into their room and they kick their hockey skates to the side or something, and so you're like, oh, this character does hockey or something like that. So
Right.
it's like details that tell you stuff about the person without you having to explain it up front. And I feel like that it pulls you into the story more because it makes you pay attention and it makes you look for little details so that you can know that about that person.
And you'll find that I have one character who eats cinnamon raisin bagels toasted with peanut butter. So I've had tons of people email me and say, you know, that's pretty good. So, you know, you just never know how you're going to touch somebody. That's all I'm saying. It's important.
Yeah.
So tell me about your publishing process. Did you go through Ingram Sparks? I mean, how did you work that
So
out?
the publishing process was the least fun part of my whole writing journey. Like people say
Absolutely.
writing the book is the hardest part. I disagree.
Right.
I think that
I do.
publishing is the
I
hardest.
agree with you. Yeah, getting it done is the hardest
Publishing
part.
was very difficult. I had to learn a lot about business and all that kinds of stuff in order to figure out who I was going to publish with firstly. And I eventually settled on my physical copies are published through Ingram Spark. My ebooks are published through Draft to Digital. Just because Ingram does a lot better with printing quality and maintenance, and Draft to Digital does a lot better with ebook quality and maintenance. And also their reach. Ingram's reach is a lot wider with physical books, and Draft to Digital has about the same amount of reach, but with ebooks. And they haven't worked on their physical book stuff yet, so I just kept my physical and ebooks on separate platforms so that I could get the most reach, and maintain some level of control. But getting my book formatted, getting my cover formatted, getting all those things put together just so that it could all be on the pages was such a struggle. It was a lot of back and forth. I noticed like a few typos here and there, even though I thought I got them all because I proofread it like a million times.
Listen, War and Peace has
Um,
typos. Don't even worry about that.
I know. I was like, at some point, I just gotta let it go, and
Yeah.
I did.
The
And I
Grapes of Wrath
read through
has
some pages the other day, and I
Socrates
found
has
another one.
typos. You know, I mean, you don't
Look,
want it to be crazy, crazy, but when an author says, well, you know, I found some typos there, I think Becoming had typos. Michelle Obama's book, right? Because you can read it, they can read it, somebody else can read it, and you miss it. You just absolutely miss it. You absolutely miss it. So
yeah,
please don't hold
and
that.
look,
Don't hold that right here, because we all got typos in our books. Trust and believe.
look.
Yeah,
At least the person knows that the author was human. Okay,
exactly,
they know the
exactly.
author was human because I just read through some pages the other day, one of my favorite scenes that I wrote, and I found one, and I say, you know what? It's nothing. Like, it's above me now. I can't do nothing about that. It's not in my hands anymore.
It does not take away from the story, right?
It doesn't.
It
It
does
doesn't.
not. So and most people read over it because they know what you were trying to say, right? It's like when they give you that paragraph and it's all kind of messed up English, but you can still read it, right? Because you know what
Mhm.
it's trying to say. So you just put it
Yeah,
in there the right way. So yeah, don't worry about that.
and
Yeah. When I
that
read that, go ahead.
the woman who reviewed my book and made her video about it and stuff, like when I found that typo, I couldn't be upset with myself because I usually would, but I found that I wasn't upset with myself because her reaction to the story meant so much more than
Did she even
uh,
mention the
the
typo?
wrong letter. No, I don't
No,
think
because
she
she didn't
noticed
see
it.
it.
Or if she did, she didn't care because
Right.
it was in the middle of a really
Exactly.
good scene. So I was like, you know, the emotional impact of my book is more important than getting all
It's
the words correct.
way more important. Now, I have been writing since 2008. And in book 3, I think, I left a character on a corner on 14th Street in DC, right? Nobody, I'm telling you, nobody thought about that character, but maybe 5 people. And they emailed me and said, you know, you left somebody, you left somebody out there on 14th Street, right? And so, yeah, don't sweat the small stuff. It's a good story. It's developed well. The characters speak to other people. And that's what you really, really want. You want the person or people who are reading your book to be able to relate and understand that their journey is not a journey that they're going on by themselves, whatever that is, right? And that's the most important thing. So once you got it done, oh, let's talk about this digital for your ebooks. I don't know anything about that. So could you share with our audience?
Oh yes, so my ebook, it's my electronic book copy. So if you wanted to read it on your Kindle or your phone or tablet, laptop, whatever, Draft to Digital is a website, it's a platform where you can self-publish an ebook. So in order to do that, you need your book to be in an EPUB format, which you can find somebody on different websites to format your book for you. My person who formatted my book was Chelsea Lockhart. She's also an author. She's the author of the We Are the Origin series, which is a great Black fantasy series. The first 2 books are done. The third one is she's working on it. So good.
Oh,
So good.
yeah, send her my way. I'd love to interview her. Yes.
Yes, and we actually have the same cover artist. So my art style of my cover looks very similar to hers because it's the same artist. And she suggested the artist to me. But yes, her book series, phenomenal. Oh my gosh. I'm in the middle of the second book, can't put it down. Super excited about it. But she formatted my book as well. She has other services, so she formatted it. And so I published my electronic copy through Draft to Digital. So it's available on a bunch of different websites, Apple, Amazon, Barnes and Noble's website, everything like that. So
And how do you control the monetary aspect of that?
Draft to Digital gets the reports from everywhere. Draft to Digital has what's called a universal link. So they create one link for your book where if you click on that link, it lists all the different places your book is available on there. And then you can choose which platform you want to click on to buy the book from, which has been incredibly helpful because I only have to give people one link to go buy my book instead of telling them to look up the title here and there and everywhere. And so the companies report back to Draft to Digital, and then they keep all of the records of my revenue and all that kind of stuff on their website, and I can go check my reports and everything. I just got an email today telling me how much I had sold in the last 30 days. So they email me every 30 days to let me know what's been going on each month. But it's kind of the same with Ingram Spark. The companies report back to them, and then they send you a form of how many books you've sold. So it's just a matter of checking the websites every once in a while just to make sure everything's looking good. So
Do you
everything's
find
been
that?
going well.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying everything's been going well.
Do you find that the age divide, where, and I'm gonna say this in the nicest way, is that people in my age range will buy a book before they do a digital? Do you have any demographic information on who is actually buying draft to digital? They give you that?
It only really gives me the where. So it'll tell me like if it's sold in America, Canada, this, that, and the third.
Okay.
Same with Ingram. Ingram really only tells me where my book is sold and not demographic wise. I do have a good idea of my demographic because of my social media. So I chose to start marketing my book while I was writing it. So on my TikTok page is where I do most of my book work. And on my TikTok page, I just recorded videos of my writing journey. So I would record like, hey, just finished chapter 33. Here's something I struggled with. Or anybody else writing out there, here's something I learned while writing. And it's just stuff here and there. And nowadays who you are matters just as much as what you can do.
Oh
And
my
so
goodness, yes.
I didn't only want to market my book and say, hey, I'm writing a book. I wanted to say, hey, this is me, and I just happen to be writing a book. So I just worked on my TikTok for a while, and once I got closer to publishing it, I started doing more marketing style videos of being like, hey, this is my novel, this is my fantasy novel, this is my fantasy romance, this is my actual romance novel, and this, that, and the third, so that I could, reach people who I felt like would more directly interact with my book. I also learned a lot about social media as I was doing that. So I learned like how long a video should be. Your intro should be 7 seconds or less because that's how long it takes to capture someone's attention. Certain hashtags you use. I made my own hashtag for my book. So my title of my book is a hashtag on TikTok. Every once in a while, I can look it up and see how many views that hashtag has gotten.
Okay.
And it's gotten almost 300,000 views on my book hashtag now. And so then I can keep track of all that stuff. But my demographic that I've reached, I'd say, is probably people ages like 18 to 25, around that area. And I know personally, I like to have a physical book in my hands. Some people enjoy reading on their Kindle more. I love holding a book, so I knew that once my paperbacks were available, I'd sell a lot more, and I was right. I've sold over 100 paperbacks now, and my ebooks, I've sold about 20 of those. But I wanted to make my book as accessible as possible. That was the goal. So it wasn't just which one would sell more. It was, I wanted to have it all available. And now I've had people asking me, hey, do you have an audiobook? Because some people listen to it better than they physically read. But that costs a lot of money. So no, I don't have one
Audio
yet. But
costs a
I'm
lot of
working on
money.
it.
Yeah.
I
But
eventually
yeah, I
want
mean,
to.
it'll
But
happen. It'll just,
yeah.
you have to make money on this and then you'll go to audio. Absolutely. I believe in that. But I'm one
Yeah.
that'll slough around with a book. I'm telling you, if I go to the beach, I have one. If I'm in the airport, I have one. You know what I mean? There's not many
Yeah.
places I go. I'm at the doctor's office if I have to wait 15 minutes and I'm reading something, right?
Yeah.
And so there's still some dinosaurs out there like me who like to just have a book in their hand, their purse, wherever, just in case you have some downtime when you can read. And welcome to the hood, the tribe of being an author. And people will say, "Oh, everybody writes a book." Well, everybody doesn't, right? Especially in our demographic, we're really behind the curve when it comes to publishing books
Yeah.
and now digital stuff, and we really are trying to put our genres and our writings into the mainstream, which is kind of hard when you still got the big guys dominating things. But we're getting there. It's going to take a little while, but we're getting there. So tell our audience something that we didn't cover. I don't know. I think I tried to be very specific about the questions, but is there something you would like to tell us that I did not touch on?
Well, one thing that we didn't really discuss as far as my novel is the representation in my novel.
Okay.
And I think,
I wasn't sure you wanted to talk about that. So, I didn't want to, but go ahead,
yeah.
please do. Yeah.
But being a Black girl, you want to see your face somewhere.
Absolutely.
And as someone who's very prevalent on Book Talk, which is the book side of TikTok, so they call it Book Talk. It's And the majority of publishing companies are still very mainstream with white and white people and white fantasy and all that kinds of stuff. So I feel like some of us are breaking through. There's been some very popular Asian fantasy stories such as Iron Widow and the Poppy War that have come out lately, and those have been amazing. And I've seen a lot more Black indie authors coming out with their books. So like We Are the Origin, Legendborn is one that's been traditionally published that is getting very big now. Sing Me to Sleep is another traditionally published Black fantasy novel that I just bought. I'm super excited to read. It's about a black woman who's a siren. I'm super excited about that.
Oh yeah.
But I feel like we still gotta do our best to get our stories out there. And a part of my identity that I didn't feel represented in at all was my asexuality. So I'm part of the LGBT community. I'm asexual. And there's a lot of misconceptions about that as far as relationships go. A lot of people think that those who are ace don't want relationships or can't be in relationships, and don't desire those kinds of things. People get asexuality and aromanticism mixed up. Aromantic means you don't want romantic attraction, you don't experience it. Right. And asexuality is just you don't experience sexual attraction. And they're very different. And when I first discovered that I was ace and what it was, I was already in a relationship. And those misconceptions got confusing for me because I was like, well, do I want a relationship? Because I'm already in one. So do I have to break up with my boyfriend? And the answer
hey,
is
did
no.
I tell you you're toast? No. Moving on.
So I realized that, being ace and in a relationship is something that not a lot of people see. And not only that, but ace people of color. You don't see a lot of ace people of color in media, anywhere. And the few books that I did find with asexual characters, it was, oh, she discovers she's asexual, but then she realizes she's okay with never having a relationship. And I'm like, but what about those who do want one? Like, we're not all
what about us?
ourselves in the corner. Like, so my main character is asexual. And it's something that she does say on page is it's just part of a conversation, and it's normal. It's just part of a conversation where she mentions that, like, she had a partner in the past that she really liked, but they weren't compatible because she didn't enjoy sex. And so they broke up. And that was it. It was just something mentioned, and that was it. And it didn't change how the love interest viewed her. It didn't change anything about her story. It was just that's who she was, and that was her truth. And the love interest still fell in love with her regardless of it. And
it's amazing how the truth will set you free, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it really will.
Yeah, I wanted to just depict somebody who was ace and still could end up in a very loving relationship, And I also market that on my TikTok, where I say, like, this is an ace fantasy romance. And you would not believe the amount of people who commented under my video saying, I'm ace and I could never find an ace romance, or I can never find my type of ace. I could never find my type of, like, queer representation. And this is so cool. And one of my ARC readers is ace, and I made sure to have some of my ARC readers be ace. And they, in their review that they wrote, it's a very long review. But in the end of their review, they were saying that, this is the best ace representation they've ever seen. They never felt so seen by a book before. And they really, really loved it for what it was. And it means a lot to me. And I wanted to give it to them. This book, I didn't write it for me. If I wrote it for me, I wouldn't have published it. I wrote it because I wanted to share something. I wanted it to be a gift to somebody, and I wanted it to touch somebody and to be there for somebody because it's something that I needed. So there may be other people who need that too. And my love interest in my book is also he's gender fluid. So in the book, he has pronoun indicators that are bracelets. So it's 3 different bracelets. One is for she, one is for he, one is for they. And depending on which one they have on that day is their pronouns for the day. And that's how I indicated their gender for different chapters. And I knew about that because I had a friend in high school who was gender fluid, and they wore pronoun indicators, and I thought it was really cool. So I was like, oh, this would be an easy way for me to do it in my book. And in my novel, in a lot of fantasy novels and novels in general that feature queer characters or characters of color and Black characters, their identity is the conflict. Where it's, oh, she's Black, so she faces racism. Or, oh, they're queer and they have to come out to somebody who's homophobic. Or and I avoid those stories like the plague, because I don't want to read a story where I'm already uncomfortable in the world in general. I don't want to dive into a story thinking I'm going to escape and then I still have to face that stuff. And so I wrote my story in a way where the conflict has nothing to do with identity. The queerness in my book is very normalized. People just go about their day about it. It's not a big deal. There's people of every color and nationality and all that kinds of stuff in my book. And it's not a big deal at all. It's just people living and doing what they need to do. and my characters have they have conflict in the plot, and it's not identity based at all. And so that's the kind of stories that I want to tell. And I want to tell stories where you can put yourself in the main character, no matter what you look like, no matter who you are, all that kinds of stuff. And so that really was, it was really important to me as I was writing, and I made sure to do that. And again, I've been rewarded for that, because people who have read my book and reviewed it talked about how normalized it is that there are queer characters, and how they truly felt like they got to escape into my world. And that's what I wanted. I wanted to give someone a safe space to just escape into a world for a little bit, so that they wouldn't have to deal with everything else going on.
Exactly. Oh, I think that's wonderful. I mean, there's enough for us to worry about. So, that should not, well, I have my own personal opinions on that. I just think it's something we shouldn't even think about, because really, let's all just live, right? And so, and because there's going to be conflicts no matter what, right?
Yeah.
And it'll have nothing to do with who you love or how you look or whether you have a blue eye or green eye. It's just part of life, right? So good for you. Oh, good for you. Good for you, Miss Brown. I love that. So I'm so happy that you came with me this evening. I know that it was on very, very short notice. You're Mr. Vincent Taylor, as I said, is a tremendous friend of mine. And so when he said, would you please just, look at Miss Brown and see if you could interview her. I told the person I was supposed to interview tonight that I had someone else I wanted to put in. And so they were more than willing to give a young author, because us seasoned veterans, we do this stuff all the time. And we want to give you a platform, right? So thank you for being here. And to end our conversation, we always ask for a pearl of wisdom. And so we'll take one from you now.
So another thing I was focused on in my novel is that love is not just in romantic relationships. Love is everywhere. And there's no kind of love that's more important than another. And so my pearl of wisdom would be to look for the love in your life. You don't have a romantic partner, focus on the love in your friends. If you're struggling with friendships, focus on the love in your family. You can find family in your friends, and you can find friends in your family if you just focus on looking for the love where you've been receiving it, and look for the love that you feel you deserve. Look for the love that's going to elevate you in your life. I've been blessed to have such an amazing support system. I have a very strong family. I have very strong friends, and I may not have a lot of friends, but I got very strong.
You don't need a lot of friends, trust me.
Exactly. I got a very strong, small group of friends who've always been there for me and have always supported me. And so I've always focused on treasuring each kind of love I have in my life, whether it's familial, friendship, or romantic. Just look for the love in your life and treasure it, because you don't know how long you're going to have it. And so you want to make sure that you do your best to treasure it. And if someone takes advantage of that, it has nothing to do with you. Continue to love as you will.
Exactly. Thank you so, so much. Please keep in touch. I really would like you to consider doing a workshop on fantasy at the book festival, but we'll talk about that off camera. And thank you everyone for being here. I am impressed. A very brilliant, creative writer. Yay! Now, Mama Tony is a retired librarian, so she doesn't say a whole lot about anybody. So yay, thank you, Mama Tony. She reads all the time. She has her own show that she does every morning on, so proud of you. Thank you. Yeah. So everyone, thank you for being here tonight. And when the lights go out and the cell phone towers go down, all you have left is a flashlight and a good book. Thank you, everybody, and keep in touch. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.